Hello, hello. If all goes well, then this video will be coming out December 31st, I hope, because I wanted to get at least one of these things out by the end of the year. I don't have to, but it'd be nice to be able to get another video out by the end of the year. Because why not? Also, good news, finally got done with oh my god, there's so many. All the commission things rewards. I should not be calling them commissions. They are not commissions. As a reminder, they are not commissions when you contribute to my Patreon. They are rewards, because I'm supposed to be working. And whenever you give me money to be able to work, then it enables me to not do commissions, because that's what artists normally have to do. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense when you treat them as commissions and then try to start arguments with me over Patreon messages about how they should be a commission, when the entire point is that they are not commissions. Isn't that right? Yes, great. Fantastic. Glad we're all on the same page about that. Alright. I'm trying to crank one out before the end of the year, and we'll be using Rouge to accomplish that. Thank you very much. Maybe that's what I should title this particular video. Cranking one out to Rouge, or cranking one out to Sonic Prime. Because I suppose this video will be mainly about Sonic Prime. I was trying to think of something that will be consequential, what's the word? Timely. Yeah, whatever. Something like that. That will be context sensitive. Wow, I can't remember the term. For this particular time of year, that people will have interest in, that will give me an excuse to draw furry bait. Because I'm trying to get a drawing out so that I can get back to the animation thing that I've been trying to do for forever. Which, good news on that as well. I have the audio done. I have ported it into Clip Studio Paint. I'll be using that again to animate instead of Toon Boom. I'm going to give that a whirl again. And everything should, operative word, should be set up in a timely fashion in order for me to actually animate. So, first thing started next year. Off we go, I hope. Oh my god, I hope. Maybe I can finally stop losing my mind recently. Alright. So, primary stage, let's get this out of the way first. I'll go ahead and give you guys some spoilers, as I sometimes do. Let's be frank. A lot of you people will tune in, oh, it's big view, and then you watch like a few seconds of it, like up to about right now. And they're like, okay, I get the picture. And then you zip to the end to see if it has anything that you can be like, oh, penis, oh, penis. And then you clap your little hands and shout the word penis several times. I don't know why you do that, but it's something you definitely do. do. And, afterwards, you masturbate. Let's be frank. What was I talking about? Yes, Rouge's Giant Knockers. A new Netflix series came out entitled Sonic Prime. Some background information. I used to, like a lot of people, watch Sonic Boom. Sonic Boom, actually, hold on. Spoilers on this drawing. I forgot what I was even going to say. It doesn't really turn out the way that I want, and a lot of that comes down to the fact that I was just trying to get something done as quickly as I possibly can. So this is not going to be my best drawing, but this is going to be one of those life lesson videos where I say, it doesn't matter if you can make something that's perfect, what matters is that you made something. And I'll skip ahead to that life lesson now. Same lesson applies here. This is not going to be a 100% perfect drawing, but it got done, and that's the point. And a lot of the times you're just trying to get something done. And I am not a master artist in every sense of the word, certainly. So as a result, this is not going to be a mastercraft or anything like that. It's going to be a master bait. I get one half of that, and you're going to take it. Haha. Okay, so to that end, a lot of the primary stage here ends up being okay looking, but I make so many adjustments that by the time I get to the line phase, I don't go back over and recorrect everything. Like the chest, I over enlarge because ha 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 boobs. And by the point that I actually get to doing that, it sort of, I feel like it lopsides the torso a little bit, especially whenever I add the color. And that causes some like tilting of the image visually, I think, in some ways. That no one but me probably is going to notice, but, you know, it's there. So if I ever make a drawing that I'm like, oh, hell yeah, I fucking nailed this, and it looks exactly the way that I want it to look, I'll let you know. But this is not one of them. This is one where I'm trying to work on my methodology for applying brush strokes in such a way that I can maintain texture while also still having depth. And unfortunately, using Clip Studio Paint's brush, boy, I really drove the ears big ears at first. They shrink eventually. She can hear well. She can hear that fapping real well. I've gotten the impression that with Clip Studio Paint's brushes, if I want to actually maintain texture, I'm going to actually have to work at a much smaller resolution, which is a little bit strange. Because this may not make any sense. If you're not an artist or you've never worked in this sort of thing, whenever you work at a small resolution, like, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you know how, like, when YouTube loads a video, sometimes it'll show anywhere between, like, 1080 to 1440 or 4K, things like that. But then if your internet gets really bad, sometimes it'll load at a really low resolution, like, you know, 360p or 240, and, you know, bullshit like that, right? It's sort of like that. Whenever you're working at a really low resolution, then you can use a much smaller brush. Like right now I'm using a 15 down there in the lower left-hand corner. I'll switch to like a 7 or so usually, things like that. If you use a really small brush, then you can see every little bit of the texture on it. Whereas if you blow up an image and you're working at like 4K, it's not really 4K, but if you're working at something like a 5920 or something, you lose that completely. It becomes a very thin, tiny line. You can barely even make it out. And if you keep working back over that same line over and over again, it eventually fills out and you lose all that texture that's on the brush. So it becomes pointless. You may as well just use like a binary brush or something. If you then make the brush bigger, like, well, I made the canvas bigger, I may as well make the brush bigger. So if you're working at the equivalent of 360 on a size 7 brush, you think, well, if I make it 1920 by 1080, then maybe I can move up to like a size 30 brush or something. And it'll look sort of the same because the brush gets bigger and the canvas gets bigger, right? No. Because, yes, you can start to see that texture again because the texture is getting bigger, but you lose that exactitude. You lose the sharpness of the edge of the brush because it starts to get kind of blurry on the very edges. So, as a result, you just end up with a really sort of muffled, blurry image that has lots of non-sharp line work. So, unfortunately, I feel like it looks the best whenever you're working at a smaller resolution. So I might just start doing that more, or something else I've considered is maybe like, I'm not quite sure, like drawing in a much smaller profile, like a lower resolution, and then blowing the image up, and then just working back over it and trying to clean it up, but that probably won't work either. You could upscale using some methods, but just nothing has really seemed to work in a way that I'm really pleased with. Like, here you can tell the texture's there, but you can tell that I'm working at a certain... You can tell that I'm working at like a uniform line stroke. And here I get rid of it because I'm not happy with it. So I start trying to do more like gestural, lighter strokes, and that doesn't really work either. So I decided, well, maybe if I make 2 line layers, and one of them is like a more defined layer, and then the other one is more like this, where it's thicker and it has more texture. Maybe that'll work. It doesn't really. I mean, it looks fine to you guys, I'm sure, but to me, it drives me absolutely crazy. Because I'm trying to... There's something about that I'm missing, and I can't really find a solution. I've been working on this for like years. The actual solution is to just work at a lower resolution and the problem goes away. But whatever, you guys are bored of artist talk. You know, who gives a shit about this stuff, right? Just boring old artists. Just draw the boob! Draw the boob! I want to see the boob! Alright, I'll draw the boob. Alright. Back to boobs. So, back to video games, I mean. This is a video about video games for children. I forgot. And nothing suspicious going on here, guys. Alright. Like a lot of people, I used to watch Sonic Boom. Sonic Boom, of course, was also a video game, which was, you know, panned because of, you know, it being rushed, and also Sonic had a neckerchief, and that was unacceptable. Not quite sure why, but, you know, just, oh, his arms aren't tan. I'm gonna kill my parents. Or I'm gonna kiss your dad, or whatever people get angry and do. I don't know. Sonic people take their stuff really, really seriously. It gets weird. Sonic Boom... The best format to watch Sonic Boom, as probably many of you know, is in clip format, because if you actually watch the episodes, most of the episodes are pretty boring, because they were working on a really tight budget, and quite frankly, I'm amazed that they were able to do what they did. But you can tell whenever Sonic and the characters are like running through the areas, there's like a couple of set piece areas where they have very limited models. And even like background characters are sort of shuffling around in very stiff, staticky sort of animations, because they're trying to do what they can in as short of a time frame as they possibly can. And even the characters move at a very slow pace. The shots are very awkward looking. Like it's just unfinished 3D, because they're just trying to get things done and out the door as fast as they can on a budget. So I never blame the show for looking bad or anything like that. This is that's how things go in this crazy world of ours, on this bitch of an earth. But anyways, that show works best in clip format, because most of the time when you're watching it, it's kind of boring. And ever so often something crazy will happen that's really funny, and then someone will clip it and put it on YouTube, and that is the optimal format. Because then it makes the show look like the funniest goddamn thing that has ever been written. It is a very good show. But it had its limitations. Had a lot of limitations. Sonic Prime has way more money pumped into it. And at first I thought that it was the Sonic Boom people being moved over, because they said that it wasn't getting renewed for a third season. Specifically because they wanted to focus on Prime. And something that was a bit more, not serious, but, you know, just not quite as comedy-oriented, I suppose. So I got the impression that the Sonic Boom people were moving over into Sonic Prime, but then I did a cross-reference of the writers and the general staff, the directors, and everything. I couldn't find a single name that was the same. So from what I can tell, there is no one involved on Prime that was also involved with Boom. I could be completely wrong about that, but the only people that I could really think of would probably be people that are under advisory roles, you know, like a Ian or, you know, someone like that. But I'm just guessing. None of my business, to be frank, but, you know, whatever. Okay, so Prime itself, which I probably should be talking about, is fine. A lot more money went into it. Obviously, the writing in Boom was not really concerned about being, like, good writing. It was concerned about being engaging and fun, and it almost comes across as Boom was more a parody of Sonic characters as opposed to being the Sonic characters sometimes. if that makes any sense. Like, they were still the characters, but it's almost as though they existed in a world that was just completely separate from the thing that inspired it. It really does feel like a parody in many ways. I miss that when watching Prime. I'm not a fan of Sonic, really. Here's the secondary pass of the lines I was talking about. I'm not a big fan of Sonic. I don't like the games. I don't care about Sonic games. I've said this, I feel like I've made this exact video several times, because I keep explaining this, but I like the general characters and the cute designs and the general idea, but I want nothing to do with the video games, and I really don't want anything to do with the fans, because the fans seem to be absolutely insane most of the time. It's just one of those weird relationships sometimes people have with entertainment media. This is mine. Like, I enjoy Sonic-related things, but it's mainly just from the art and ideas side of things. I keep track of the IDW comics, certainly, and I keep track of the artists that are involved with it, and I try to make sure that they stay supported, because I really like them, and they like me. As far as I know. At least a couple of them do. And as a result, I'm very loosely familiar with a lot of obscure things within Sonic, but I'm not really in there, you know? So whenever, like, Sonic Prime, the entire premise behind Sonic Prime is that Sonic hits a MacGuffin crystal. I forget what they even call it. It doesn't really matter. I think it's just called the Prism Crystal or something. And he breaks it into different colors, and not Sonic colors. And that causes his reality to fracture into different, like, alt-verses. This is not really a spoiler. I mean, they've shown all this stuff. But there is sort of the main one that they interact with in, I guess, was going to be Season 1. And it is sort of this cyberpunk? I don't know how to describe it. It's not cyberpunk, but, you know, just sort of a future metropolitan urban-only area in which everything has been cityfied. Everything is just city. And it's sort of a Orwellian not that bad. Not 1984. Brazil, maybe, if you get that reference. Sort of dystopia where everyone is just at the grind and doing everything for the sake of the council. And instead of Eggman, it is a council of Eggmen. One of them is like a baby, one of them is like a aloof teenager, another one's an old man, another one is a guy with a wig. You get the idea. And all the characters are slightly different. So, like, Tails still exists, but he's not really Tails, and Rouge still exists, and she's still rocking it, but she looks different. And it's the same way with every single universe that they jump into. So there's like a pirate one, there's one in a jungle where everything is just plants, as opposed to the one that's everything is just a city. There's even one in which there's nothing there. And I don't think actually anything happens there. I think it's just like meant to be a narrative thing that they kind of interact with for a split second, and then it's just not there anymore. And the pirate one, of course. And I think there was another one that we have not seen, but I saw media of it. I might be mistaken about that. I can't remember anything about it. Just the design of the characters look different, but I don't remember seeing it. As far as all those go, I would say narratively, my favorite is easily the city one. That one seems to be the most fleshed out. There's also the jungle one. It was probably the most disappointing, because that one is purely just like a comedy, and the concept behind it doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense. And since there's no Eggman of that one, they had to come up with a villain for that, and the villain doesn't really work as a concept. It just comes across as being ludicrous. I think that one is the most child-oriented of all the little arcs, I think. Something that consistently people forget about with these shows these days is this is all supposed to be for children's media. Like, these are things for kids, right? And the answer is no. I feel like we've kind of moved past that at this point. There's a lot of shows that are just blatantly for children. You can always tell with the tone. And then there's other things that are written to be sort of loosely engaging for adults, but at the same time there are jokes in it that are, not for adults only, but, they're adult enough that we can still enjoy them. I'm glad that shows are being written that way these days. It's not like it was whenever I was a kid in the 1980s where everything was just a toy commercial. Like, you don't want to go back to that. So the argument of don't expect anything from these shows because they're made for children, we can stop doing that these days. Please stop doing that. That's not really an excuse. Anyways, the Jungle one, as far as the writing, was probably the most disappointing because it doesn't really go much of anywhere. The concept does not really fly the way that I think it should. As far as like the character motivations and the resolution goes, it's very on the nose. Just nothing really about it worked for me. The pirate one also had the same problem. Like, it's just too transparent. Which, it's just Sonic. I get it, but it's a bit lacking, I think. The city one, again, not that it's like subtle. It's so subtle, has nuance. I'm not getting at that. Just it just has more going on that's more interesting to sort of follow. I think part of it is just because you're learning a lot about the world and how everything works in the first part, so a lot of focus is on that. But I think a lot of it also is that the pirate world and the jungle world are just too simple of a concept. It's sort of like going to a Star Trek or Star Wars planet, and it's the desert planet, or it's the jungle planet or something. And then once you see the one set that Star Trek had for that episode, then you've seen everything. And the concept behind it is just not fleshed out, so you don't want to stay there for too long, because you're really not going to gain much of anything out of it. It's sort of like that, I guess. Haven't given it too much thought, because it's just Sonic, but whatever. But I did, for the most part, enjoy it. I'm trying to think of a way to talk about it without talking about it. Really not much happens. As soon as you hear the concept, it works out exactly the way that you would think. Except it doesn't really resolve. Because the ending of this season kind of feels like it just ends. I get... They're probably working on a very stiff budget as well. As well as a time frame that they're really struggling against. And the show actually looks very good, considering probably the loose amount of money that's going into it. I don't know how much is going on or anything behind the scenes. I'm just guessing. But judging based on Sonic Boom and the finances that it probably would go into something around the era of something being greenlit during the epidemic, I can't possibly imagine that they had that much to work with. But it still looks pretty good. The pacing feels a little bit weird sometimes. And the characters also feel a little bit strange from time to time. I've heard some people complain about how Sonic characters are treated constantly. Probably most of all Knuckles and Shadow, because they sort of have this problem of... Shadow has a problem of Sega, I feel like, wants to make him Vegeta. In the sense that he needs to be the alternate counterpart, the Sonic that wants to solve everything in sort of this antagonistic, anti-hero sort of way, I suppose. Whereas I imagine most people would probably say that Shadow is not really like that. His original characterization, I guess, was this whole concept that he was this manufactured life form that just doesn't like humans or the world that he's in and is self-serving. I'm not really an expert on what exactly Shadow was supposed to be before how he's portrayed now. I just know this about him. So if someone wants to go on about that in the comments, they can. I do know a little bit about Knuckles, though, because Knuckles actually was kind of interesting in the sense of, in Sonic Boom, famously, they turned him into this big hulking knucklehead who sometimes will say like clever or profound things because that's the joke. He's supposed to be the stupid one. And I did not mind that because Knuckles is great in Sonic Boom. Can't say that about the video game. In the video game, he just flies up, and that's how you win the video game in the unpatched version. Whenever he was introduced, he was supposed to be the Shadow, in the sense that he was supposed to be the counterpart to Sonic that gave him all the problems, as opposed to just Eggman being Eggman. But that didn't really work out. They wanted a more direct one-to-one, and that's where Shadow came in. And of course, with these little 2D games, there's only so much you can do with those as far as characterization goes. If I remember correctly, you really don't get much from Knuckles in his titular little game. He just sort of laughs at Sonic and is brash, and that's kind of it. He doesn't really have much going for him. The entire concept behind him was that he was being used by Eggman, being manipulated. And I've had to mansplain this, I guess, to Sonic fans sometimes. Because a lot of people complain about the fact that Knuckles was not being used correctly or represented correctly, but he's one of these characters that never really had anything going for him. So, by the way, I know that the boots on her actual model look different, but by the time I noticed that, I thought, this is too complicated looking. I'm not going to try to figure out the model on this. I'm just going to draw her with normal feet. So I just did. Anyways, but Knuckles, whenever he was introduced, was just that. There was just not much to him. He was the strong man that was sort of antagonistic and was being used by Eggman, and that was kind of it. So whenever they tried to move him out of that, because Shadow occupied that spot, he was left with nothing because there wasn't really anything to work with in the first place. The only thing that he really had left once Shadow started occupying his personality slot, as far as being the main antagonist towards Sonic, was the fact that he was used. The fact that he was easily fooled. So as a result, from my understanding, I didn't play all these games, but I've seen him represented quite often. He ended up developing this more personality that he was a simpleton, or he was quiet or stoic. And usually if you can describe a character as being stoic or quiet, that's a really big warning sign that your character is not fully realized, especially with a male action style character. Like probably most famously to my audience would be like a Jedi, like Phantom Menace, for example. If you how would you describe Qui-Gon Jinn? He's very stoic. And of course, these days, he's a more realized character because of peripheral, stuff that has come out ever since. But at that time, he was just the stoic Jedi. He's very, very serious, and he gets things done, I guess. It's really hard to describe him. Whereas, of course, these days, they've fully fleshed out the character in a way that they did not in the movies. But it's a big warning sign. You never want your character to be described as being stoic or serious or anything like that. Because if you've reached that point, that means there's nothing to them. And Knuckles had that problem. What is Knuckles other than his identity as a character that is strong, but he was used? Like physically strong, but he was used by someone smarter than him. How do you develop that? And the answer is you really can't. And if you flash forward enough, this is the reason why you get a character like that in Sonic Boom. What do you do with a character like that? What do you do with someone that's treated as being a simpleton that was used for his strength and betrayed people that he should have thought of as his friends? You get an idiot. So that's the reason why he is the way that he is. And it's not until recently where I feel like they've actually gotten a character that they can be more proud of, in the sense of he's more of a fish out of water that is just living such an isolated life that he doesn't really understand, what's outside of that life. So as a result, that's most of what he is as far as like entertainment value goes. But whenever I've seen him portrayed in comics and other media as well that don't really focus too much on that element, most of it comes down to the fact that he really wants to protect his island, and he considers himself to be a serious protector, and that's what's important to him, which to me is incredibly boring. Like, he's just the guy that is real serious about doing his job. Like, great, how thrilling. But, at least it's something. If Sonic fans are happy about it, then they're happy about it. In Sonic Prime, if I can loop back to that, and I'm glad I used Knuckles as example character for this. Man, I completely colored this stupid heart thing all wrong. I could have used a reference image for this, but I was just trying to get things done. Knuckles you don't really spend much time in the actual, like, core universe in this series. But whenever it gets to the city one, then he's just sort of like a rebel. It's almost... Yeah, he doesn't really have a lot of personality now that I think about it in the city one. Because he's kind of just the character that's sort of the yes and person to talk to Rouge about her decisions. By the way, the robot version of Amy in that one is great. For some reason, I really like her. She's very intimidating. I like it whenever her limbs really grow tall, and she just starts walking over everyone. She looks great whenever she does that. Ruby Rose, I think is what she is called there. I enjoyed all the little alternate names that they came up with that are supposed to fit the scheme for every universe. Those were nice. But yeah, he doesn't really have much of a personality, that one, because he just sort of exists to say things. And that is it, I guess. Is he even in the jungle one? I don't think he is. I don't remember him. He could be, but I don't remember if he's in the jungle one. But then it goes to the pirate one, and he's the captain. But he's... like, he goes from being downtrodden and... like, he just wants to make sure that his crew is having a good time all day, and he doesn't want to actually work. Because he's ashamed that he ran into some rocks with his old crew. Like, the show has writing problems. It has a lot of writing problems. But then whenever he finally gets over that, he like goes insane. But it doesn't really have a payoff. You think, oh, he's going to like betray Sonic and then learn an important life lesson about how his crew are the real treasures all along, or some dumb bullshit like that, because it's a kid show. That doesn't happen either. He kind of just gets a little fucked up, and he gets the stone, and then nothing happens. Because the show doesn't really have time to explore it. It just moves past it. It's weird. But yeah. As far as the series goes, I think it's like a solid... for a Sonic fan. For a Sonic fan, I think it's like a solid 7. If you're not a Sonic fan, I don't see why you would be watching it. Which raises a lot of questions about me. But also, I'm watching it to see if they reference Styx, and I want to see Rouge's Baps. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's fans of all kinds. They don't necessarily have to like the thing. They just have to enjoy looking at it, right? Yeah, there you go. And I have not played Sonic Frontiers, if you're wondering. I don't know a damn thing about Sonic Frontiers. I briefly watched people play it, and that was it. And it looked like something that I would probably play for like 3 or 4 hours and then say, I'll do this tomorrow, and then I would just forget about it and then not go back to it. This is that kind of game for me, probably. Here we go, final image. Did not turn out the way that I wanted. Gosh. All the lines are all... Yeah, I forgot to darken up the line work as well. Then again, I did go back over it with color. I just didn't finalize. Ah, well, whatever. It's fine. It looks fine. There's just many things I would do to it now that I have new eyes. But anyways, Sonic Frontiers. I wanted to mention Sonic Frontiers. They did mention that Styx the Badger exists, and I got really excited about that. It's like, oh yeah, fuck it. Sorry, I shouldn't have clapped into the microphone. Fuck yeah, Styx. Like, if you guys want to see an actual picture of Styx that I'm proud of, or a picture of a Sonic character that I'm proud of, just look for like some Styx pictures. You can tell that I put way more effort into those, that's for sure. Because I like her design. I don't like the crazy anti-everything like government, I have messages in my teeth bullshit. I hope that they reintroduce the Styx character, and they name dropped her. She at least exists in concept. And I think that might be another Ian thing. Trying to reincorporate things, which I really appreciate. I get the impression that characters like that will just be referenced from time to time, but they'll never actually be depicted, which is very unfortunate. I hope they don't go that route. But if she ever does get really incorporated into the universe, I hope her physical design doesn't change too much. Like, losing the sort of wild cave girl sort of thing, I could understand to some degree. I really would like them to lose the crazy conspiracy nut thing, especially these days. Oh god, especially I've had my fill of it, and as fun as it can be sometimes, it does run its course. I like her better as just being like feral, like sort of like Knuckles. Like Knuckles is the most fun when he's a fish out of water, and Styx works sort of the same way, where she's the most fun, where she should be like Goku from Dragon Ball. Like early Dragon Ball. Like, this is a bad example. Like, Goku would just pull down his pants and just start peeing. And I'm not suggesting this with a Sonic character. But just as far as, like, you know, their personality goes. Just totally irreverent, doesn't get it, doesn't understand what the big deal is. There's probably at least one picture of her that I drew in, like, 5 minutes a few years ago that has dialogue in it that might be what I'm talking about, but let's not focus on that. But she should be a character that doesn't really get it as far as the niceties of civilization goes. And that should be her joke. But as far as wanting to have friendships and just all that Sonic bullshit for kids, fucking horse shit, then she can just do whatever everyone else does. It's not complicated, it's just Sonic. As far as the like general presentation of the universe and how everything is heading and how the characters are portrayed and all that stuff, I think it's actually going very well. The franchise was really not in good straits back in like the 2000s, 2010s even. But here in the late 2010s and the 2020s, I really do think it's really turned on its heel and is heading in a much better direction. And I'm glad that they have a lot of advisors now that seem to have emerged from the fan base that existed since the late 90s, in the early 2000s especially. The people that do seem to be the backbone for presenting it to a new generation of fans that will continue on and so forth and so on. So I'm glad that it's working out for those of you that are more serious about these things. As for me, I'll just continue drawing the baps, and you will continue applauding, I suppose. As for me, I will go back to animating now. Don't mind me. If you don't like my opinions, don't mind, because I don't like them either. How about that? Didn't expect that, did you fuckers? Okay, thank you for sticking around. I gotta get back to work now. And I have to get back to actually doing my taxes, because I just realized just now I have to do the fourth quarter for this year and the annual tax report. No. No. I need to do the fourth quarter this January 15th, and then the quarter after that I had to do the annual for this past year, and the first quarter for the next year. So this coming quarter won't be as bad, but that's the 15th, so I've got to do that too. The joys of self-employment. It's lots of things that you don't anticipate until you actually do it. And I've been dealing with that for years. Lots of fun. Okay. Anyways, see you guys next time. Hopefully the next video will be either a great big 2-hour-long video, or it will be an animation. I hope, but probably not. We'll see. All right. Bye-bye.